Hey, name's Jack. I built this house with my own hands, raised a family inside it, but after one argument, my own son locked me out, then looked me dead in the eye and said, "Dad, drink this for peace." I should have seen the warning signs, the silence, the missing money, the cold smiles, but I stayed quiet until I found her voice, Aretha's voice, and everything flipped. Now tell me, what would you do if your own blood planned your silence? I was sitting at the old kitchen table when Marcus walked in, without knocking. The screen door creaked just like it always had, but today it sounded more like a warning than a welcome. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting lines across the worn linoleum floor, the same floor my late wife used to mop every Saturday morning, humming her favorite gospel tune. Her picture still sat above the fireplace, watching everything with that quiet grace only she had. Marcus hadn't been by in weeks. Not since that last phone call, the one where he said, "You just don't get it, Pops." And maybe I didn't, but I knew what respect looked like, and this wasn't it. He stood with his arms crossed, face tight. I stayed seated, not because I was weak, but because I'd learned a long time ago that storms pass faster when you stay still. "You sold the East Point house?" I asked, already knowing the answer. He didn't flinch. It was sitting there empty. Figured I'd handle it. "You figured wrong," I said, steady as stone. His mouth curled. "It's just property, Dad. What's the big deal?" I looked down at my hands. Old hands that had fixed busted engines and driven a city bus for 30 years. "A man's name and his home are the last two things you don't take from him," he scoffed. "That house is dead weight. You're stuck in the past." And there it was. That sharp edge in his voice, the same one he used when he thought he was the smartest man in the room. Maybe he was, but wisdom don't always come with a college degree. "Son, I've seen what happens when pride spends what love can't afford." He rolled his eyes and stepped closer. "You don't trust me. You never have." I clenched my jaw. The room started to feel smaller. "That's not true. But trust ain't a gift, it's earned." He glanced at Mama's photo. "You always hide behind her memory." I stood then, not out of anger, but because he'd crossed a line. My palm slammed the table before I could stop it. The coffee mug tipped, dark liquid spilling across the table and onto the floor. Silence followed, loud and uncomfortable. He left without another word, the door slamming behind him. The quiet that followed was colder than any winter I'd known. Later that evening, I heard the car pull back up. I didn't move, just sat there, gospel music playing low, same as it had all day. The door opened, and Marcus stepped inside with a strange calm in his eyes. "Hey, Pops," he said. "Too easy. Thought I'd stop by again. Got you something." He lifted a bag. Coffee. Peace offering. I watched him move around the kitchen like he still lived here. He reached up into the cabinet, pulled down her cup, the chipped porcelain one she always used. My chest tightened, but I said nothing. He brewed the coffee slow, methodical, humming under his breath. Same gospel tune. I hadn't heard him hum in years. When he handed me the cup, he smiled wide, polished. "Drink this for peace." I took the cup, feeling the warmth seep into my hands. The crack in the porcelain twisted my reflection. I took a sip, bitter, metallic. The taste. It wasn't just the coffee. It was something else. I couldn't name it, but it wrapped around my tongue and sat heavy in my chest. My hands trembled slightly, but I didn't let the cup fall. It wasn't the bitterness of the coffee, I whispered to myself. It was the taste of something I couldn't name, yet betrayal. Marcus sat across from me, calm, like he'd won something. My heart thudded slower, each beat dragging like heavy steps through wet mud. I reached for words, but my tongue felt thick. "Marcus," I managed, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer, just watched, my vision blurred at the edges. I leaned back in the chair, and the room started to tilt. Somewhere in the background, the gospel tune played on same one we'd played at her funeral. I stared at the ceiling, the light flickering just a bit. My fingers slipped from the cup's handle, and it clattered softly onto the table. I thought the room was spinning, but maybe it was just my world turning upside down again. I woke up, still in the armchair. My neck ached. Sunlight pushed its way through the blinds like it didn't care what had happened the night before. My mouth was dry, tongue heavy like I'd chewed on cotton all night. For a moment, I didn't move. I just listened. The radio was still on, low volume, same gospel verse playing like it never stopped. I'd turned that thing off. I know I did. My hand reached up to rub my forehead. The throbbing behind my eyes was a slow, dull beat. I tried to piece it together. Marcus, the smile, that cup. Then nothing. Just a blank space in my mind where memory should have been. I looked over to the mantel, her photo still there, steady, watching, not judging, just there like she always was. The clock above it said 11:48. I'd lost almost half a day. That ain't just sleep. That's something else. I stood up, legs stiff. Something inside me felt off, like the ground had shifted under my feet and didn't quite shift back. I shuffled into the kitchen. Her cup, was gone. The counter was wiped clean, but there was a faint ring, like something sat there long enough to leave a ghost. Trash can? Empty. Not just empty, lined fresh, like someone had taken out the bag and replaced it. I sure didn't. I called Marcus, straight to voicemail. The tension in my jaw had me grinding my teeth without realizing. My hand went to the drawer by the back door where I kept the old camera monitor, a relic from when this neighborhood first started changing. I flipped it on. Static. Not frozen, not disconnected. Static. Somebody had wiped it. I muttered. You can't call it paranoia when the math adds up too perfect. Then came a knock. Soft, polite. I opened the door to Carmen, the neighbor 2 houses down. Her arms crossed, head tilted just so the way folks look when they already made up their mind about what they saw. I saw Marcus's car late last night, she said. Parked outside for a while. Thought y'all made up. I tried to force a smile. We talked. Then I guess I fell asleep. Her eyes didn't move. Around 2, I heard something. A thud. Didn't sound like no sleeping to me. I'm all right, I said. Just tired. You don't look all right. She stepped closer. You look like someone who's been played and don't want to admit it. I wanted to argue, but my breath caught. I'll call the doc, she said. No, I snapped, maybe too quick. Ain't no need for that. She softened. I ain't trying to pry, Mr. Reed. Just folks don't always treat blood like it means what it should. As she turned to leave, she paused. Blood don't always mean loyalty. Be careful who you forgive. Evening settled slower than usual. The air had that fall bite in it, the kind that gets into your joints and stays there. I sat at the table again. Same spot, same chair. Phone buzzed. Marcus. I stared at the screen a second, then answered. Hey, Pops, he said, like he was calling to ask if I needed milk from the store. You good? Sounded like you were out of it last night. I stayed quiet. You probably just dozed off. Long day and all. I cleared my throat. Marcus. That cup. What cup? I waited, listening for a crack in his voice. Dad. He laughed. You sound tired. Get some rest. Click. He hung up. I stared at my hands. They didn't shake from age. They shook from something I couldn't quite name. Not fear. No. Something sharper. Controlled anger. I stepped out onto the porch later that night. Air was thick. The kind of night where every creak sounds like a footstep. I had her photo with me, couldn't sit without it. I whispered, maybe I ain't crazy. Maybe I just been too quiet. Then I heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel. Slow, deliberate, headlights off. I reached down beneath the bench and pulled out my old Nikon. Dusty, but it still clicked. Someone was out there, and this time I planned to see. 2 days passed. My body felt better, but my spirit hadn't caught up. That smile Marcus gave me, like he was closing a deal, wouldn't leave my mind. I tried to tell myself, maybe I was just tired. Maybe I read it wrong. But that metallic taste, it didn't belong in any coffee I knew. I went about my day trying to find normal. I watered the little tomato plant out back that hadn't produced in months, but kept hanging on. I cleaned up my old Zenith radio, got it working just enough to catch a local jazz station. Fed Carmen's tabby, who stared at me like he knew something I didn't. Still, that missing cup haunted me, the blue one she always used. I opened every cabinet, every drawer, nothing. It was like it never existed. But I knew it had. I saw it. I tasted it. I held it. My pastor once said, "Trust is like fine china once cracked. Even the glue remembers." That line echoed in my head louder than any sermon he ever preached. By late afternoon, I couldn't sit still. I got in my truck, drove slow through the neighborhood, ended up near the corner store Marcus liked, the one by the old laundromat. The clerk was a young man, polite. Knew me from when I used to bring my wife there for her scratchers. I asked if he saw Marcus recently. "Oh yeah," he said. "Couple nights back. Came in real late. Bought bleach, gloves, big pack of paper towels. Said he spilled something." I didn't respond right away. My hands gripped the counter tighter than they needed to. "Something big?" I asked. Didn't say. Just looked kinda tight in the face. I thanked him. Walked out. Sat in the truck for a while. Windows rolled up. The air thick. Back home, I checked the garage. Pushed aside the bins and boxes. In the far corner, behind the mower, was a bag. Inside, an empty bleach bottle. Same brand that store carried. It didn't scream at me. It just settled. Like cold water in my gut. Evening crept in slow. Around 7, the doorbell rang. It was Marcus. He wasn't alone. Denise stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes already judging. And behind her, Tyrone, hands in his pockets, fake smile on his lips like he was at a cookout. They stepped in like they had a right to. Their voices were soft, concerned. "We just want to check on you, Daddy," Denise said. "Been hearing you've been forgetting things." "I'm all right," I replied, keeping my voice even. Tyrone chimed in, "Just making sure everything's okay. House this big, lot of work. Maybe time to think about options." "Options?" I asked, like I hadn't heard the word before. Denise stepped forward. "Like letting Marcus help with bills. You know, take the weight off." "That's sweet," I said, forcing a smile. "Funny how folks remember your age when they want your name on paper." She flinched a little. Tyrone laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then Marcus slid a folder onto the table. "Just in case something happens, Pops. Power of attorney. Makes it easier, you know?" I looked at the papers like they were rotten meat. "No," I said. "It's just precaution." "No." Marcus's jaw clenched. "You're making it harder than it needs to be." I leaned back. "I might be old, but I still read fine print better than your mama's recipes." Denise slammed her purse on the table. "This is ridiculous." They left not long after. No hugs, just silence. I sat for a long time, staring at the door. Then I noticed it. The little red blink on the bookshelf. Her old digital recorder. I forgot it was there. I hit play. Voices. Their voices. Snippets of the visit, caught like ghosts in a bottle. Phrases about handling things, memory issues, and making decisions for him. I didn't remember turning it on. Maybe I didn't. Maybe she had once, and it just stayed there. A habit of hers I never questioned. I rewound it, pressed play again. Then, click. Everything went black. Power out. Silence so thick, it pressed against my chest. And right then, sitting in the dark, I knew somebody else still had the key to my house. I sat in the dark long after the blinking stopped. That cassette recorder, on the table, still warm from my hand. The silence wrapped around me, like a wet coat cold, clinging and hard to shake. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat and thought. About Marcus. About the way Denise looked at me like I was a burden wrapped in old skin. About how quiet betrayal moves not with a shout, but a whisper in the hallway. Next morning I drove through the part of town where nothing looked the same anymore. Trees cut down, stores boarded up, faces I didn't know looking at me like I was the one who'd changed. I turned onto Vine Street out of habit and pulled up in front of New Hope Baptist, but the gate was locked, and the sign on the door read, "Closed for renovations." That church raised me, baptized my son, buried my wife. I stood outside a while, hand on the gate, just listening. Sometimes, silence tells you more than any preacher can. Back in the truck, I called Mr. Harmon. He used to handle our estate stuff back when people still used landlines and paper checks. He picked up quicker than I expected. "Jack," he said, voice like gravel and memory. "I was wondering when you'd call. Think we can meet?" I asked. "Lunch, Tucker's Grill, 1 o'clock. Click." I drove slow, watching shadows bend under the Sunday. On the way, I thought about something my brother told me once. When people stop calling, it ain't always about phones. Sometimes it's about how you made them feel last time they picked up. That sat with me harder than it should have. Mr. Harmon looked older, like me, but sharp. Still had that creased suit and eyes that didn't miss much. After the small talk, he got quiet, pulled a file from his briefcase. "Your wife's will. I need to show you something." I nodded, waited. He slid a scanned copy across the table. This version was updated 3 years ago. My heart didn't skip. It stopped. "I never saw this," I said, eyes locked on the page. "Never signed off, never agreed." "The signature looks like yours," he said carefully. "But I remember when she filed it, Marcus brought it in." I scanned the page. My name wasn't listed as executor anymore. That role now belonged to Marcus. There was a new clause, one that allowed for my relocation to assisted living upon recommendation by immediate family and physician. I sat back, hands curled. I didn't shake from age. I shook from restraint. "I see now," I said. "It ain't about my mind. It's about my name." Mr. Harmon didn't speak, just closed the folder and nodded once, like a man offering silent respect to the losing side of a war. I didn't go straight home. I took the long way through Ashby, past the old train tracks. When I did pull into my driveway, I didn't even go inside right away. I drove to the hardware store. First time in 15 years, I bought a new lock. That evening, I unscrewed the old deadbolt, the one I'd never bothered changing after we moved in. Every twist of the screwdriver felt like peeling off years I didn't know had hardened on me. When it clicked into place, I exhaled. Not relief, just readiness. There was a letter in the mailbox. No name, no return address. Inside was a photograph. Marcus, Denise, standing in a notary office, smiling, a paper in hand. Somebody took that picture for a reason. Somebody wants me to know. And, whoever they are, they ain't on Marcus's side. Later that night, the phone rang. Marcus, again. "Hey Dad, just checking in. Need anything?" I looked at the wall, at the picture of my wife above the mantel. "Just one thing, son." "Yeah? What's it like to sleep well when you know your father can't?" He didn't answer, just hung up. No click. No tone. Just dead space. I stayed in the study for a long while after. Picked up a frame Marcus at 5. Holding my hand in front of the first car I ever bought. He had that gap-toothed smile, like the world couldn't touch us. Then I heard it. Click. Soft. Deliberate. Someone was trying the old key. I didn't move. Didn't make a sound. Under the couch, wrapped in a rag, I found the cassette recorder. The old one, not the digital one that blinked red. This one had her handwriting on it. Sunday Worship, 1997. I placed it on the table, pressed record. "If this is how y'all want to play," I whispered, "let's make sure we all remember the game. This time, I won't be the one forgetting." I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there, eyes open, listening to the sounds of the house settle like it was exhaling secrets. The recorder's clip played on a loop in my head. Marcus's laugh, slick and careless. That empty spot on the shelf where the cup used to be. Something was off. No matter how many times I told myself to let it go, my gut said otherwise. I finally got up, Moved through the house quiet, checking doors, latches, windows, everything locked, everything in place. But it didn't feel right. Not my house. Not my home. I walked down the hallway, stopped in front of the old picture of Aretha, her smile soft, eyes knowing. I ran my thumb over the corner where her initials were carved. She used to say, "Sometimes the enemy hides behind your name." Back then, I didn't understand. I do now. I stood there for a long while, thinking, praying a little. Whatever's going on, it ain't just a mistake, and it ain't just family drama. It's deeper. I can feel it in my bones. Something slick, hidden, and if I don't dig it out, it'll eat everything I've built from the inside. Morning light crept in like it was afraid to wake me. I brewed some coffee and sat in silence until I heard Jalen's knock. He stepped in with his head low, phone in hand, acting like he didn't know where to put his eyes. "Morning," I said, steady. "Hey, Grandpa, you get home late?" He fumbled with his sleeve. "Stayed over at a friend's place. We were studying." I watched him. "You sure that's all?" He hesitated. "Marcus called, said you might be, stressed. Told me not to worry." I leaned back in the chair. "And do you believe him?" He looked up, finally. "I don't know what to believe, Grandpa. I don't even know who to believe anymore." That hit me deep, not because he said it, but because I knew he meant it. That boy's heart was torn between what he saw and what he was being told. I didn't flinch. I didn't push. "You don't have to choose now," I said. "But truth don't care who believes it. It just waits." He nodded, quiet, and left not long after. That silence he left behind felt louder than his footsteps. By late afternoon, Carmen came by. She didn't even wait for a full greeting before she laid a manila folder on the table. "Found this cleaning out the old toolbox Marcus left behind my shed," she said. "Didn't look right." I opened it and started going through the pages. Invoices, notes. One particular sheet caught my eye: maintenance work order, signed by Marcus. Same code as the one Harmon pointed to on that evidence bag. "You see that?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I see it." She crossed her arms. "This ain't just some family spat, Jack. This is a setup. Calculated." I nodded. "He used my name, used my house, might have even used Aretha's memory." She pointed at another receipt. Bleach. Gloves. Industrial cleaner. Who needs that much, unless they're hiding something? I looked at her. "You sure you want to be involved in this?" She didn't even blink. I don't like seeing good men get played, especially not by folks who should have protected them. I leaned closer, voice low. "If you ever get scared, don't leave. Don't back down. Stay." "I will," she said. "But we need to be smart." So we sat at her table, the one by the window with the lace curtain and the old church calendar tacked to the wall. We pulled out old receipts, checked notes, flipped through logs. Carmen moved fast, sharp, like she'd been waiting for this moment, like some part of her had always known Marcus wasn't clean. We found notes with dates, wire transfers, under my name, papers notarized by Jonas. That part cut the deepest. Jonas had been a friend. He was there when Aretha passed. Said prayers at the burial. I never thought he'd be the one holding the pen behind my back. Carmen leaned in. "This started months ago, Jack. Maybe longer. He didn't just steal from you. He erased you. Quiet. Piece by piece. Anger boiled up quick, like a fire lit in dry grass." I gripped the edge of the table, stared at the receipts like they could bleed. Every line was a blade. "I want to go to him," I said. "Now. Make him look me in the eye." "You do that angry, you play his game," she said. "You want to win? Be colder than him." I breathed deep. Let the rage settle. Then nodded. We collect. We wait. We strike when it matters. As dusk came down like a curtain, I walked back home. Sky was fading. Street quiet. Everything felt like it was holding its breath. I reached my porch and stopped. Tacked to the front door was a plain white envelope. No name, no stamp. I opened it. Inside was a key. Old, worn, heavy in my hand. And a note. You lost this long ago. I stared at it, heart thudding slow and deep. I knew that key. It wasn't just metal. It was memory. It opened the storage room behind the garage. Aretha's quiet room. A place I hadn't stepped into since she passed. I stood there on the porch, watching night fold over the yard, and whispered, "They think they hold my house. But tonight, I hold the secret." The key rested in my palm, smooth and cold, like the truth I hadn't wanted to touch. I was back in my living room, the same spot I'd sat in 1,000 times before. Only now, the room didn't feel like mine. The recorder sat silent on the table beside me, like it had nothing more to give. I stared at it, hoping it might just come alive again and tell me something I didn't already know. Carmen's voice played over in my head, clear as glass. "They altered the papers, Jack, and it wasn't sloppy. And Jalen, the boy wouldn't even meet my eyes earlier." His silence had weight, the kind that draped itself over a room and hung there, thick and suffocating. Every tick of the old clock on the wall hit different now, like it was counting down to something. I closed my eyes, thought about Aretha, what she'd say if she were sitting across from me. Probably something soft, but sharp. "You know what's right. You always have." And she'd hand me tea, not answers. I whispered to the empty room. Sometimes, silence is the loudest lie. I stood up, cracked my back, grabbed the keys, and dialed Harmon. He picked up quick. "You all right, Jack?" "No," I said, "but I'm done being quiet." Less than an hour later, I was parked outside Harmon's downtown office. The building was near empty, the kind of quiet that wraps around you when it's late and cold, and truth's finally coming to meet you. He opened the door himself. No assistance, no distractions. Just that steady look he always wore when things were about to shift. I handed over the envelope, the copies, the photos, and the recorder. He looked through it all, flipping slow, reading deliberate. "This is ugly and coordinated. Can it be undone?" I asked. "Maybe, but this wasn't clumsy. These aren't one-time forgeries. This was built brick by brick. Over time, I didn't flinch. Then let's start pulling bricks." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You sure you're ready for what happens if we pull too fast?" "I'm sure I've already lost too much by waiting." He nodded. "You'll need more than this. You'll need to make a stand." "I already did," I said. Just no one was watching. I left his office with the weight of his warning still sitting in my gut. The street was quiet when I got home. Too quiet. The porch light was already on. But there was another light, too. The headlights of Marcus's truck. He was leaning against it when I pulled up, arms crossed like a man ready for a fight but hoping it wouldn't come. "You went to Harmon?" he asked before I could open my mouth. "I did." He stepped forward. "Why would you drag this out in public? You're making things worse." I stepped past him, unlocking the front door. They were already worse. I just stopped pretending. He followed me up the steps. "Dad, for peace, for everybody's sanity, maybe you should stay somewhere else for a while. Cool. Things down." I turned to face him in the doorway. "You're asking me to leave my own home?" "It ain't like that," he muttered. "But you're stirring things up. You're making us all look bad." Denise stood a few feet away, not saying a word. Tyrone was by the car, arms folded, eyes locked on the sidewalk like it had all the answers. "You'll only see me leave on my own terms," I said, steady. "Not yours." Marcus shook his head. "You're being stubborn." "No, I'm being clear." He didn't argue. Just left, heavy steps down the porch, taillights disappearing into the dark. When the house finally settled again, I started searching. Not out of paranoia, but because something inside told me there was still more they were hiding. Drawers, cabinets, old shoeboxes, nothing, until I got to the study. Behind a shelf that hadn't been moved in years, I noticed a warped floorboard. I pried it up. There it was. A black, leather-bound ledger, tucked away like it didn't matter. I opened it. Names, numbers, dates, transactions, all clean, all precise. Funds pulled from accounts, life insurance checks sliced up, bits of money drained over years. My money, Aretha's. Even church donations. Marcus's handwriting showed up again and again. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I called Carmen. I found it, I told her. There was a pause. Then her voice cracked. You sure? Solid as cement. I got the paper trail. They don't get to lie their way out of this. No, they don't. She exhaled. I'm with you, Jack. But you move too quick. They'll come after you harder than before. I'm not running, I said. They don't get to steal from me and call it love. Later that night, I sat at my old desk, the ledger spread out in front of me like a map of betrayal. I lit a lamp, put on the radio. Let the gospel hum low in the background. Not for comfort, just habit. On the top of the stack was a document from Marcus. Temporary custody of assets, it said. I picked up a pen, held it over the signature line. If I signed, they'd win. They'd say I gave it all to them willingly. If I refused, it meant fire. It meant lawyers. Maybe even jail. But at least I'd still be standing on truth. I looked at the clock. Harmon was supposed to call any minute. I stared down at that line, the pen trembling between my fingers. Do I sign and play along, or refuse and risk everything? That new key burned in my pocket as I walked to the back of the house. The workshop door locked years ago stood before me. I hadn't set foot in there since Aretha passed. The building sagged, breathing dust. Inside, tools lay where I left them. Saws, wrenches, plane shavings on the floor. Old photos leaning on workbenches. Half-finished frames. The smell of wood and rust, thick in the air. I approached the lock. It had seized long ago, a little stubborn, but the key turned. The door groaned open. Darkness waited, empty and full at once, as though it had been holding its breath. Stepping inside, I found a dusty cassette recorder on a shelf. Next to it, a tape labeled Aretha. For Victor, 2003. My heart caught. I pressed play. Her soft voice came first, hesitant, then clear. If ever you feel lost, listen. Truth lives in the quiet. Don't let betrayal grow where love was planted. Guard your name, Victor, as though it's the last thing you'll leave behind. Her voice trembled there. She spoke of deceit she felt long before I knew. Spoke of dreams for our children, of faith. She ended. When you hear this, understand that I saw what others refuse to see. Only hold fast to those who prove themselves by keeping promise. Tears stung my eyes. Her presence filled the workshop. It was as though she stood behind me, whispering into my ear. In that moment, I recognized she had prepared for this fight years before she left. Me a map when she walked away. Behind a heavy shelf, I noticed a small DVR box, dust-coated, as though waiting. I carried it to the table and plugged it into an old monitor. The screen flickered. Then footage played. Marcus and Selena together, moving the broken cup, scrubbing the counter, disposing of evidence in trash bins. They spoke quietly, but clearly. Make it untraceable, one said. The other nodded. My chest pounded. They betrayed me not with passion or rage, but with planning, precision, cold intent. I leaned back against a workbench, whispering, "You thought I was blind. I was just patient." Anger roared, tears welled. Sorrow hollowed me out, and then resolve. I screenshot the footage, duplicated the cassettes, backed up the recorder. Evidence was shifting from burden to weapon. Stepping outside into night air, I inhaled deep. The cool night smelled like challenge. Across the fence, I saw Marcus's car parked at a neighbor's. He moved tonight. I thumbed the screen, phone in hand, ready to expose. But I waited. Timing is trust's strongest ally. I turned back toward the workshop door. The hinges creaked behind me. Someone entered quietly. I didn't turn. I gripped Aretha's tape in my hand, heart pounding. Footsteps stopped. Tonight, the walls have ears, and I've been waiting to speak first. Marcus came through the back door without knocking, like he still had the right. I was standing at the counter, arms crossed, the old cassette player already out, USB drive beside it. He glanced at the setup and smirked, like I was playing some sad little game. I didn't say a word, just pressed play. Aretha's voice filled the room, calm, certain, raw. Her message cut through every lie still clinging to this house. Marcus's face twitched, but he held his grin, until I hit play on the second file. The surveillance footage flickered on the small screen. Him and Selena. The cup. The whispers. His smile died. Right there. On my linoleum. "You took my piece," I said, voice steady. "Now let's speak truth." He snorted, tried to laugh it off. "That? You think that proves anything?" "You probably set this up. Framed us." I held up my hand. "You can lie to yourself. Not to me. Not anymore." He shook his head, muttered something about me losing my mind. But I didn't flinch. I'd already lived through the worst. The kitchen lights hummed above us. Then the front door opened. Selena walked in, hair damp from the mist outside. She froze mid-step when she heard the last line of the recording. Her face drained. I didn't give her time to recover. I pressed play again, different clip. Her voice, clear as crystal, talking about withdrawals, about where to hide the money, about keeping Dad out the loop. She stood motionless, staring at the footage like it was a stranger. I looked between them. "I taught you honesty. You learned performance." Marcus turned to her fast. "So you were talking? Behind my back? You said you had it handled." Selena snapped. "You were the one who told me to do it." They started shouting over each other. Accusations like knives flying across the room. Old resentment surfaced, ugly words they'd never dare speak when Aretha was alive. I let them rage. Then I raised my hand again. "This house has heard lies long enough," I said, low but sharp. "You've got 24 hours. Pack your things. Go." Marcus stepped forward. "You threatening us?" "No," I said. "I'm telling you the truth. You don't belong here anymore." Selena choked out a sob. "Daddy, please." I didn't mean, but I cut her off with a look. "Truth ain't revenge. It's release." Marcus scoffed, puffed his chest like he still had something left to prove. "You won't call the cops?" "No," I said, walking toward the table. "But I'll be telling every single member of this family what you did, and I'll show them the proof." They stood there stunned. Then Marcus grabbed his keys off the counter and walked out without another word. Selena lingered longer, her breath catching, her hands shaking. But she followed him out. The door shut behind them. Not a slam, just final. I sank into the chair at the head of the table, reached into my pocket, pulled out my wedding ring. Set it down in front of me. "Aretha, I kept your promise. I watched until the end. I didn't cry, not really. But when I tried to speak again, my voice cracked. Y'all took more than money. You took time." Thunder rolled outside. Heavy, slow, like God himself was grieving right along with me. I sat there for a while. Let the quiet settle. No more yelling, no more pretending. Just me and the truth. Finally mine. I got up to lock up the house for the night. That's when I saw it. An envelope under my coffee mug. Cream-colored, soft corners. Her handwriting on the front. For Victor. I picked it up. My hands stilled. If you're reading this, it means they've turned against you. But there's one thing you still don't know. Dawn was crawling over the horizon when I stepped out onto the porch. Coffee warm in my hands, the letter heavy in my lap. I hadn't slept. Didn't want to. Not with Aretha's handwriting staring back at me like that. My fingers shook a little as I unfolded the paper. Her words were soft, written like she was whispering straight into my soul. She talked about the day she first saw the signs Marcus sneaking around with bank papers, numbers not adding up. She said she'd stayed silent back then, not out of fear, out of hope. Said she knew confronting him might break the family more than hold it together. She chose silence, she wrote, not because she couldn't speak, but because she trusted me to finish the story when the time was right. Then came the line that stopped me cold. "Baby, they don't remember the man who fought. They remember the man who forgave." I sat there long after the coffee went cold. The street was quiet, just birds stretching their wings and the low hum of life starting again. But inside, I was fighting a storm of my own. All that proof I had, all that betrayal caught on tape. I could blow this whole thing wide open. Put Marcus and Selena on full blast. Let the family choose sides. But I remembered my father. Years ago, different kind of wrong, same kind of pain. He had evidence too, but he stayed quiet. It ate him up from the inside. I watched him go bitter over the years, and I promised myself I'd never carry that same weight. Maybe forgiveness wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the last strong thing a man could do when the world expected him to fight back. I walked back inside, took out the USB drives, the tapes, the paper trail Carmen helped me gather. I stared at it all one last time. My proof, my protection, my vengeance. Then I burned it. It didn't scream, didn't beg, just curled into smoke and floated away. Later that morning, I walked the halls of the house, every step echoing a memory. The dent in the hallway from when Tyrone threw a football too hard. The chipped cabinet Aretha always meant to fix. The corner where she'd hum and stir Sunday gravy, swaying to Sam Cooke. In the kitchen, I looked at her photo, took it down, wiped the dust, hung it back beside mine. This house saw too many ghosts, I said out loud. Now it'll raise dreams instead. I reached into the hall closet and pulled out that wooden plaque she made years back. The one that used to hang above our bed before grief made me take it down. Family first. I nailed it back up. A little later, Maya showed up. She looked tired, but lighter. Said she came to check on me, see if I was holding up. We sat on the porch, 2 mugs of tea between us. No big talk, just quiet. She glanced over at me like she was waiting for something. I handed her a folded deed. She opened it. Her eyes got wide. "Granddaddy, I can't after all this." "You don't inherit pain," I said. "You inherit a chance to end it." She didn't say much after that, just nodded and looked out toward the street. I told her I'd be moving, not far, just down to Florida, with an old friend who owed me a few domino games. Said I wanted sunshine, ocean, no more secrets. Before I left, I locked the front door one last time, ran my hand along the railing, whispered goodbye under my breath. As I walked down the path, suitcase in hand, I didn't look back. But Maya stayed inside. She wandered the house a while, touching walls, picking up old books, running her fingers across photos. Then she opened a drawer. There it was, one last cassette, labeled in Aretha's handwriting. For when he's gone. She pressed play, and her voice came through, soft, laughing. "If you're hearing this, it means my old fool finally let go." Maya smiled, tears running down her cheeks. A new story was just beginning.